It's really great to see amazing turnout for the first. I think this is the first brown bag lunch series. It's kind of taken the place of the coffee talks that we had been doing. And it's good to see so many colleagues on and some familiar names as well. So this is going to be a monthly event that we're going to organize. It's going to be relevant topics to small firms. Today we're going to focus on some updates or some new stuff with the Department of Buildings and Zoning. I have with me Douglas Cha from the Bedrock Group, who is going to be the main presenter today, and he's going to focus his presentation on mostly the ACAR process and then the new express permit process as well, because I think that's going to be relevant for everybody. And then we're going to have after the short presentation, a big question and answer session that doesn't have to focus on the topics of the presentation. It can really be about anything. We just ask that it's not about necessarily project specific questions, but if we could focus on more general questions, that would be helpful to everybody. That'd be great. A couple of just announcements before we get started. Thank you to our sponsors, the 1869 Circle Partners. And there's going to be another one of these in the next month. You can register through the website, through the link that I registered for this one for. And there's also a July 11th, I'm sorry, summer gathering that you can register for as well. Yeah. Allison, you're on mute still. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, and we'll try to limit this to 1 hour. So if you want to exchange emails in the chat, do it now or do it through the Slack channel so you can stay connected. And please put your questions in the Q&A rather than the chat. It'll be easier for us to moderate and do that later. So Doug, if you want to take it over, introduce yourself, and we can go from there.
Hi, everybody. My name is Douglas Cha. I'm an expediter with the Bedrock Group. I've been doing this roughly about 24 years or so, with extensive knowledge in small projects to brand new high-rise superstructure type permits and projects. So again, as Goran mentioned, we're going to briefly discuss quick overviews of the ACAR process, zoning review, along with the express permit program overview. Now, with each one of these, obviously, there's going to be a lot more in-depth information as to the guidelines, procedures, requirements. But what our goal is today is just to kind of quickly provide an overview to have general knowledge of each process that's outlined here in the agenda. Next. Okay, so the express permits process, it was introduced by the City of Chicago Department of Buildings back in November 2023. As we go along throughout the year of 2024, I believe the city is going to, amend, update the procedure and process as needed. So any input there as far as like from the architects or contractors that might help the city provide a better suitable faster permit and express permit is beneficial. So you definitely want to kind of make notation of that. So the express permit program replaced the previous permit process for easy permit process, formerly known as EPP, which is more or less the same thing. Solar express permit process, and also all the short form permit processes such as plumbing and mechanical trade permits. Next. So under the express permit process, the applicants are allowed to select some of the different guided work types, and the city's system is designed to ensure applicants provide all the information that is needed for the city to efficiently review an application and issue a permit based on specific work types, which is on the following slide. So repairs and small projects, communication equipment, exterior window door replacements, fence trash enclosure, interior alterations, which we will provide an example of certain eligibility and not eligible requirements on the following slide: masonry work, mechanical, emergency plumbing repairs, anything that was more or less formally processed through easy permit processes now being permitted via express permits, with obviously certain eligibility and not eligible requirements. So for an example, interior alterations, non-structural interior work. The express permit program offers a streamlined way to obtain a permit for non-structural interior alterations affecting up to 2,000 square feet of area for many types of spaces, including homes, offices, stores, mercantile spaces, etc. For example, work within a single residential unit. These are some of the eligibility requirements and factors that you need to comply with in order for your project to be eligible for express permits, such as remodeling up to 2,000 square feet without adding or removing or reconfiguring walls or doorways for rooms other than the closets. Electrical work, including new electrical service up to 400 amps, performing mechanical HVAC work, including adding new air conditioning units, performing plumbing work, including adding up to 5 water supply fixtures, etc. And if we want to continue to the next slide, it'll depict the, with drawings prepared by an Illinois architect or structural engineer, you're allowed to have remodeling non-structural up to 2,000 square feet, including adding and removing, reconfiguring walls and doorways. So we want to touch up on that. If you don't have architectural drawings and you are reconfiguring walls and doorways, you will need to engage a licensed design professional to submit drawings under express permits. If you are not reconfiguring walls or doorways, the architect or licensed design professional is not required, as long as you meet those eligibility standards. In addition, some items are not eligible for express permits, such as structural work, new interior stairs, rearranging existing interior stairs, exterior work, such as replacement of exterior windows and doors, change of occupancies, etc. And basically, there's different eligibility factors, such as, work within a single non-residential unit, which right now we're focusing on a single residential unit, but there are different factors and eligibility factors for single non-residential units, and also work in common area or work in more than one unit, which are not included in this example and reference, but there are different guidelines for that. And that's going to be similar to all the different type of work types and permit types that are allowed under express permits. There are a list for each different type of permits that indicate, the eligibility requirements for those permit types. Next. In addition to that, express permits has administrative permits that can be processed as well, such as contractor revision permits, changing of ownerships on original permits, deferred submittal coming soon. That I'm not 100% sure as of right now what they mean by that, but I'm assuming that's the ongoing process of trying to help fine-tune the process to include and incorporate a lot of different permit types under express permits, along with post-construction filing and post-issuance approvals. Next. In addition to that, there's other related permits, such as construction trailer and scaffolding permits that can be processed via express permits as well. Next. So part of the express permit process, when a permit application is submitted by an owner or expediter indicating that the work will be performed by a contractor licensed by the Department of Buildings, the licensed contractor will be notified by email and must click a link in the email to accept the job before a permit will be issued. This will help prevent license fraud. Licensed contractors who need to update their official emails should log into their account on the city's dynamic portal or contact Continental Testing Services, which is the outsourced licensing agency that helps facilitate trade licenses in the city of Chicago, because the e-acceptance notification emails are sent automatically to the email address associated with their license account. So if it's something that's different, they won't see the email. So they need to make sure that their emails are up to date with continental testing. So the express permit program, there is a $25 non-refundable application fee that needs to be paid prior to submitting the application to the city to initiate and start the express permit application review process. All licensed contractors listed on the application will also be notified via e-acceptance, which they will need to accept in order for the application to be approved and a permit issued. The permits will not be issued until all listed contractors have e-accepted. Now, if any of the contractors reject or deny the e-acceptance application notification, the permit applicant can revise the contractor information listed on the application itself. Otherwise, the applications will be denied and the application fee is not refundable and will have to be reapplied for. So the average permit review duration and time frame for express permits is taking roughly 3 to 5 business days. I think, based on my discussions and initial meetings with the city when they implemented the process, they're targeting this to only take 1 to 3 business days as we proceed throughout the year. Some important factors that you need to consider are applications that are in a landmark district, or requiring any other department type approvals will oftentimes result in longer review times, and those timeframes will vary based on the department's queues and so forth, such as landmarks may be taking 12 to 15 business days or possibly less or longer. Next. Okay, so the alternative code approval requests, which is also known as ACAR. A lot of you guys may have submitted ACAR applications or not, but the process provides basically a uniform procedure for licensed design professionals and contractors to file for any type of, special conditions or requests for alternative code, and some of the administrative relief and special permissions, that will need to be filed will need to incorporate, an application that needs to be completed. The application fee will also need to be paid, along with any type of plans or supporting documents or contractor bids and so forth. But you can proceed to the next one, Lauren. So to touch up the required documents, required submittals are examples of completed inside ACAR application, drawings, supporting documents, narrative explanation of the ACAR request, contractor bid estimates, costs and breakdowns, etc. And a fee needs to be paid prior to submitting the ACAR application to Department of Buildings for determination. So the average ACAR review timeframes, the applicant should allow at least 10 business days for the ACAR review. Oftentimes, you might experience longer review times with ACAR, probably closer to 15 business days. It really depends on, the season and the time of when you submit the application and how backed up the deputy commissioners and the commissioner are with their reviews. So moving on to the zoning department review. The zoning department review is obviously located at City Hall, the 9th floor zoning department, and their compliance review basically will consist of a lot of different factors, which you can move on to the next slide, which will itemize all that. So the zoning review will include proper classification of business activity and business occupancy. If the business activity is allowed in a specific zone district, compliance with parking, landscaping, and building requirements, verification of valid driveway permits, if applicable. One of the things with driveway permits is you need to make sure that even if there is an existing driveway on site, if the driveway is older than 10 years old, and has a valid permit, those driveway permits will also need to be updated because the duration of a driveway permit is only 10 years, and every 10 years they need to be updated and renewed. Also, public right-of-way use permits, granted privilege permits for any type of public right-of-way encroachments, such as like fence swings or brick, building veneers, door swings, and so forth. Zoning special review types. There are a few, one being advisory opinion, administrative adjustment, variation, special use permits, zone amendment, and zone changes. Now, advisory opinions is a pre-submission review with the zoning administrator to kind of clarify certain zoning compliance issues. That process normally takes anywhere from 15 to 30 days to seek determination. Administrative adjustment will probably take somewhere along the lines of 15 to 30 business days to process as well. And variation, special use, and zone amendments take forever. But they take normally about, anywhere from 3 to 4 months on average. So zoning review fees, electronic in-person zoning review meeting options. So this shows you a breakdown of the city's zoning fees for new construction, along with repairs and alteration or remodeling permits for existing construction. It has a breakdown of structures of 10,000 square feet or less, structures between 10,000 and 100,000 square feet. You'll see that there are different fees associated with those types of scopes. One thing to touch up on is in the city of Chicago offers an in-person zoning review meeting option, which could help expedite the initial zoning review and subsequent resubmittal reviews from its average review time of approximately, plus or minus 15 business days. And that always fluctuates depending on queue to roughly 5 business days or so for the zoning review if choosing an in-person option, which is also indicated on the next slide. So here you show standard, and these review times will vary throughout the year. Currently, right now, you're looking at the standard initial zoning review to take plus or minus 15 business days. Resubmittal reviews could take anywhere from 5 to 8 business days. And then an optional in-person zoning review, if you opt to proceed with that, will take roughly 5 to business days for the initial review. Subsequent reviews, it should take less than 5 business days, probably more along the lines of three business days or so.
I think that's your last slide, Doug, if you, or do you
Okay.
have? Yeah. So thank you. Thank you again for that overview. I know it's probably mostly stuff that most people already know, but it's good to see it all kind of laid out and when bullet pointed. I guess we'd like to open this up to Q&A, and it sounds like the Q&A feature is not available. I don't know if everybody saw that in the chat. So if you have any questions, just throw in the chat and we can start there. I already see a couple in there. Christopher asked about different submittal specialized building components requiring third-party preparations. Is that a question specific? You can unmute and maybe clarify. Is that just a statement? I don't see a question in there necessarily. Is Chris still on?
I'm still on, yeah. No, it's more a statement because, again, deferred submittals typically are for portions of the design that is not, or that are not submitted at the time the permit application is.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. You were just explaining what Doug was.
Yeah, just explaining what it was. Yeah, and it's sometimes also referring to special inspections as well, but that's not really the same thing. But in any case, yeah, there's variations on how some of the submittals are done. So it's just a matter of just, having the understanding that you're not necessarily going to submit everything for the permit.
Got it. Yeah, I misread it said
Yeah,
deferred.
that's fine.
Yeah. Raymond asked, does Chicago provide an average review time for express permits? So is there a portal somewhere where we can find this, Doug? I don't know of one, so I assume not, but is it?
The average review time for express permits is currently taking anywhere from 3 to 5 business days, just to allow a sufficient amount of time. They may process it within a matter of a couple business days, but again, that really depends on also the contractor's e-acceptance, because they have to e-accept that before the permit gets approved and issued.
But I think the question is there somewhere to look this up, or is it just kind of you either know it or don't, based on your
To my knowledge, I do not believe the city has the average review time posted. But that was a general question that I did ask the deputy commissioners during the training course for express permits a while back.
Got it. Okay. And this is actually just came up as you were talking. I had the same question Lindsay's asking about, and confirmation. If you're replacing windows or doors in place, an express permit can't be used. Is that correct?
That's what the interior renovation. So there are different factors. Like I stated, there's a lot of different type of work types and permit types under the express permit program. So it's critical that you click on certain types of what you're applying for in order for that project scope to be eligible for express permits. Otherwise, it could get denied.
So you're saying if we click on the interior alteration,
and then do just window replacements, they'll tell you that you applied for the wrong permit.
I
and
see.
Then you have to reapply.
What if the window replacement is part of the interior alteration? Can you click both, or do you have to choose?
You would need to then possibly seek the express permits or deputy commissioners permission to incorporate that into the interior alterations non-structural permit under express permits. And they are flexible, they're lenient. Obviously, this is a work in progress with the city as well. But there are other elements of, when a building permit is required or when it's not required. And you do want to also check, when a permit is no longer required to do XYZ work, because sometimes based on the occupancy, the height of the building, the location of the buildings, it could allow you to proceed on with that scope of work without having to pull a permit.
Got it. And is there ever an instance, just to kind of piggyback on that, is there ever an instance where it would be beneficial or better to do 2 separate express permits concurrently for the scope of work rather than trying to bundle it all into one?
My opinions and suggestions on that is, if there are different factors that would more or less deem your project not eligible for express permits under that permit or work type application, I would confirm that with the city's express permit department for eligibility, because one of the things that you want to avoid is more or less stacking permits. If the city notices that a project should technically be submitted, via standard permit process or self-certification for a complete renovation remodeling work, and they see that you're pulling separate permits for mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and interior renovation, non-structural, and also window replacements, they're going to deny your application and tell you to submit everything under one permit for standard plan or self-certification. Now, it's possible that you might be able to get away with it, but that's one of the things is that you should probably ask for permission for that.
And who's the point person for that, or who's the contact? Is there a general email?
They have a general express permits department email that's published on the city's website.
Okay.
And there's obviously different DOB deputy commissioners that you could reach out to. Specifically, I believe it's Martha right now. So.
Okay. There is a question from Jason. Is zoning review still plus or minus 15 days for self-cert projects? I guess, and kind of to expound on that, does it matter as far as zoning review? Does it matter whether the project is self-cert or standard plan with Department of Buildings?
Unfortunately, the answer to that is no. At least for right now, the city does not have a separate queue for self-cert versus standard permit plan review projects. So to respond to and answer Jason's question about 15 plus or minus 15 days for self-certs, yes, that is correct. If the application does get routed to zoning for a full zoning compliance review by the Department of Buildings, unfortunately, the initial review does take that long. Now, as mentioned, there are different options available to help expedite that zoning review, such as the in-person zoning review meeting option. That could help reduce your overall timeframe for zoning review from plus or minus 15 to roughly 5 business days. As long as you believe that everything is in compliance and there shouldn't be any type of major zoning revisions that need to occur. One of the other key factors is that if you are renovating an existing building or tenant space that does not have any type of change of use, you want to kind of stress that and reach out to your DOB PM or the DOB deputy commissioners to see if you can seek special permission from DOB to issue a conditional approval by DOB for zoning review versus having it sit in the standard queue for zoning.
Yeah, there's just speaking from experience, we've been able to do that on many projects. If you don't have anything that's part of your project that zoning should or would review, sometimes you can get the zoning review waived, which is great. And then another thing I tell my clients for self-serve projects, it's zoning that's gonna be the critical path. And so if timeline's really important, then we should also pay for the in-person zoning review to get to the top of the queue. Because it's typically zoning that's the critical path for us anyway. It's in my experience.
And one thing to touch up on is that if the building is also a landmark building or in a landmark district, the application will need to get routed to the Landmark Commission for review and approval. Unfortunately, there are no expedited review options for the Landmarks Commission. And per my discussion with the Landmarks Department recently, I should say, they're taking roughly, I believe, 12 to 15 business days for landmarks. So in that instance, you might want to consider, is an in-person zoning review meeting option going to be beneficial or not? And is it going to save you time?
That's a good point. If it's got to get routed to landmarks anyway, then it's just a waste of money to pay for the in-person. Just to touch on this, because I think it's part of Jason's question as well, it's my understanding that the debt check or the debt certificate process is different for self-cert projects. Is that correct? Versus standard plan?
Correct. So standard plan, you do not submit for the debt check request directly to the Department of Finance and Revenue. It's routed internally within the city's system to secure the revenue review and approval on the building permit application. Self-certification, you do need to include the debt clearance certificate with the self-cert permit document submittal package. And that application or that debt check request needs to be submitted online. And with the Department of Revenue and Finance, it's kind of a crapshoot where some applications have come back within a matter of a couple of weeks, and some have taken more than a month.
Yeah, and as most of us know on the call, that the debt certificate has been taken kind of the longest. Has been delaying our projects quite a bit. And so we can submit for that before the permit application is filed, right?
Absolutely.
It's something you should get on top of if timeline's really important. That would be it's something to start early in the process.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you do need to remember is that the debt clearance certificates are only valid for an X period of number of days. I can't remember off the top of my head if it's 90 days or 120 days. So you want to make sure that you do not go outside of that validation date. So if you're 3 to 4 months out from finishing the design and being ready to submit for permit, you want to make sure that you kind of submit that debt check request accordingly to your schedule.
Okay. I see a couple of new questions that popped up from Lindsay and Kristen. We had a couple of questions that were emailed to us prior to, so I'm going to jump to those first, and then we can come back to the chat. One is regarding the current zoning rules regarding garage roof decks and garage roof deck access. We are working on a project, and well, this is specific to a project, but I think it's relevant to everybody. Existing garage roof deck, above grade bridge directly connecting the house's first floor. We could not find any clear rules regarding bridges and rear setbacks or garage roof decks access and egress. So decided not to touch the area to be safe. I mean, this is the bridge in this instance would be an existing nonconformity from a zoning standpoint, and yes, you're right not to touch it because it is no longer allowed per the rewritten ordinance, where they essentially allow access via, I forget exactly how it's written, but I think it says something like a stair parallel to the accessory structure. So, either parallel, it's got to be parallel to it. So, and it provides a maximum width of, I think, 4 feet. So the bridge in your project is an existing nonconformity, and I don't think any alteration of it would not be approved other than through a variation process. Question asking, do you see any scenarios where express permit could be leveraged in combination with a standard permit submission to expedite the review process? And I think we already touched on this a bit earlier. As Doug mentioned, I think submitting multiple permits on a project could muddy the waters and make it take longer. So I don't know if you have any opinion on that, Doug. Like an express permit in combination with a standard permit, maybe if it's sequenced correctly, it could expedite it, but I don't see a scenario where it would be beneficial.
Yeah, and the thing that you could leverage, I guess, in combination with the standard permit is the interior demolition permit, non-structural demolition permit. One of the factors there is that you do need to secure the zoning review approval for your standard permit application that's being reviewed by the Department of Buildings and Zoning before that interior demolition permit is issued by Express Permits Department.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Demo permit would be probably a better pathway there to get started sooner. What question was about replacing exterior cladding in kind? It doesn't require a permit at all. I know you're checking with the zoning department or with the building department on that, Doug. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I left a message with one of the DOB deputy commissioners just to clarify and confirm that cladding is allowed without a permit or not. My assumption obviously is that you would be able to, but again, I'm trying to confirm that, and I could circle back with you with that information.
So switching to zoning, how is the walking distance measured when submitting a TSL, transit served location map? Is it the way a person would walk, or the transit bus line segment, or is a segment line straight line from the subject property to the transit bus line, i.e. as the crow flies? And this person says they've been asked to provide both measurements. That has not been my experience. It is my understanding that it's as the crow flies from the closest entry or exit to your building to the transit station, whether it's the CTA or the bus stop. I've never been asked to provide a distance the way a person would walk. But I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that. I think it's that one's pretty typically straightforward. And then a follow-up on the TSL question or transit served location. If an existing building is rehabbed from 6 units to 8 units, and the lot size zoning allows this, does the parking requirement increase to 8 off-street spaces? The answer to that is yes. Typically, depending on this, there is one parking space required per one dwelling unit. Then if the answer wishes to seek a TSL exception or TOD exception to 4 spaces, would that be granted as of right if it's eligible for a 50% reduction? It is my understanding that that's the case, and it would not require an administrative adjustment to get that if it's written in the zoning ordinance and your zoning allows for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And the TSL needs to be applied for. Obviously, it needs to be reviewed and approved by the zoning department. If your TSL is approved by zoning, then that should be granted by right if you, as long as you do not exceed the 50% reduction. Now, if you exceed the 50% reduction, then obviously that would then require an administrative adjustment to reduce the parking requirement.
Of course. And then there was a quick question on the, and then we'll get back to the chat. This is the last one, the definition of an inner court and an outer court, and that's just in section 1205 of the Chicago Building Code. We don't need to get into that, I don't think, on the call unless there's a specific question regarding that. Question going back to the chat from Lindsay. Do you need to meet with landmarks prior to submitting for permit? That's not a requirement. It's always recommended, I think. Well, Doug, you can expound on it, but in my experience, landmarks has been a great department to work with. And if you have any questions or anything that's unclear regarding your project, it's not a bad idea to reach out to them, but I don't think it's a requirement to meet with them prior to submitting, correct?
It is not required. However, as Goran mentioned, it is suggested and recommended if you are, touching the exterior facade or any interior elements that may be classified as landmark fixture items. That those are things that you kind of want to run by landmarks so that you do not have any type of major revisions that need to occur throughout the building plan review permit process.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there's the whole PRC review process for things that, if you're proposing alterations in either a landmark building or within a district, then you definitely need to engage them and go through the whole, the PRC review. From Kristen, do you know if the city plans to update or streamline the permit application process, Hanson and the dynamic portal? I've heard rumblings about that. I know they mentioned something. Hal mentioned something during this year's self-cert class that I had to go, to go to. But I haven't seen anything official from the city regarding that. Do you know, Doug?
No.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen anything about that either.
I hope so. Hanson is so old, and we all deal with it all the time. But I think, from what I gathered, the intention was to combine those two into one, which would make sense. And then Lindsay, last question on express permit. I have the same question to clarify, and I don't know that we have an answer today, but it is a good one to bring up. The intention of the express permit is that you're getting a permit for only one of those categories. Is that how it's set up? I haven't applied for one, Doug, myself. I know you've done a couple for me, for my clients. How is the portal set up? When you click through, you can only click on one of those categories?
Yeah, unfortunately. So when you apply for an express permit application, it's going to ask you, there'll be like a drop-down filter of what type of permit you're applying for, whether that's going to be window repairs or if it's interior alterations, non-structural, or if it's a roofing permit. It'll ask, what you're applying for. So if, I guess, going to Lindsay's question, if you have a project that's going to have a new roof, replacing existing windows, and also some interior renovation work, most likely, you could ask the city's express permit department and ask them if there's any way that you could file for separate permits for each one of those scopes. But my opinion and thoughts about that is that they may tell you that it's not eligible for express permits, and you'll have to submit standard plan or self-cert.
Got it. Okay.
Regardless if the scopes technically qualify for express permits on their own scopes and trades.
Right. And you can't click on multiple ones. You have to choose one.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I don't know if that's intended or not. Maybe have you tried?
Yeah, I've applied for many express permits since they've implemented the new procedure. And we did unfortunately get flagged for one client and project, per the request of the client, obviously, to file for multiple trade permits, with the risk of it being considered as stacking permits. And that's that was the one and only project that we I guess got some pushback from the Department of Building stating that it should be submitted via standard plan as a full renovation remodeling permit.
Got it. I do have a follow-up on that, and it's a project we worked on together. Is you had that slide on when drawings are required or when a stamp drawing is required from an architect or a drawing at all. So in the instance that we fall under a category where we don't need to submit sealed drawings, is there ever an instance that the owner, contractor, et cetera, would have to submit some kind of drawing or a sketch of sorts under those other categories?
Yes, so we, for projects that I've worked on specifically, we've always recommended to include some sort of drawings, floor plan, site plan, whatever it may be, whether they need to be sealed or not, based on the requirements by the express permits department. It's always better to submit something into the city's records because, granted, under express permits, they don't stamp and approve those drawings when the permit gets issued. It's still recorded in their system that XYZ drawings were submitted for permit review and approval. And if you don't have that, obviously, it could be more problematic than not, during inspections or in the future. So we always suggest to have some sort of drawings, regardless if it's stamped or not.
Got it. Okay. So I guess to me, it seems like the intention of that program was to be able to allow homeowners or contractors to submit for that permit without an architect or engineer. But it sounds like in some instances it might be like, I know we were asked for that on a project specifically, even though it was what would have before been a repair, replace, rehab, keep an existing plumbing fixtures in place type permit. They asked us for a drawing. So I wonder how if that comes up and an owner is applying for it and they don't have drawings, anyway, I guess short answer is they don't really know yet, and it's kind of working out the kinks.
Yeah, and yeah, as far as like mechanical only permits, plumbing only permits, we oftentimes will even request, one-line riser diagrams, equipment schedules, certain layouts. So it's something that you kind of want to consider in the future when you do apply for these express permits, that some sort of drawing is typically requested or a plan is requested by express permits, regardless if it needs to be stamped or not.
Okay. Oh, we got a couple more questions. Can work on an orange line building, Chicago Historic, be submitted via express permit? Is there anything in the express permit portal that disqualifies landmark buildings from
No, so that to touch up on that is, obviously with the average permit review timeframes for express permits being roughly 3 to 5 business days, if it does affect if it's in a landmark designated building or district, those holds and review processes will get routed internally to those departments for review and approval, and that could prolong the overall permit review timeframe based on that department's current queues and review timeframes. So
you're saying the PM would check the address, check the zoning map, and then route it
internally.
I assume they would route it to zoning as well if there was an issue or they thought there might be an issue with zoning.
Correct.
Yeah. So Allison pointed out that the commission encourages applicants to seek its advice and guidance before filing a building permit application. That's been my experience as well. They encourage it, they welcome it, but it's not a requirement. And I think if you have anything that's in question, I would encourage you to reach out to Landmarks first, because it's going to help your timeline of your project significantly to work with them ahead of time. I don't have any further questions in the chat or that were sent in prior. If anybody wants to unmute and continue discussion, ask follow-up questions, feel free. Or if there's anything else to touch on. No? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I hope it was beneficial to everybody. I know actually I learned some stuff too. So if you have any follow-up questions, I'm going to throw my email and Doug's email back up on the screen. Feel free to reach out to us, and hope everybody has a good rest of their day.
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.